Haverton looked peaceful from the outside. The houses were neat, the lawns perfect, the neighbors polite. But peace in that town was built on silence. Everyone knew Victor Hale's name. They said he was a man of values, a pillar of decency. He sponsored school events, attended every church meeting, and smiled for photos. His words about ethics and family echoed through the community hall. People nodded and clapped. They called him the man who restored order. But Lena knew what that order cost. Inside her mother's house, voices were never raised. Disagreement was treated like sin. Every meal was eaten in careful silence. Her mother, Elise, spoke softly and smiled too much. She said they were lucky to have Victor. He paid the bills. He fixed things. He kept everything running. And he kept them small. He decided what friends Lena could see. He decided what her mother could buy. He decided when the world was safe to speak. Lena had learned to measure his moods like weather. A pause too long, a glance too sharp meant storm. When he was pleased, the house felt weightless. When he wasn't, every breath felt like walking on glass. Haverton loved Victor because they never saw his storms. He saved those for home. He hid them behind the neat roses and charity photos. He understood reputation like religion. It was his armor. It was his control. Elise called it patience. Lena called it fear. As a child, she thought quiet was safety. As a woman, she knew it was surrender. After that night on the porch, the sound of the crack stayed in her mind. It wasn't just a broken phone. It was proof that truth could break too. She looked at her reflection in the dark screen and saw resolve. If he ruled through silence, she would fight through records. She started keeping notes. She labeled each one by date and tone. Every threat, every command, every quiet bruise. A secret archive grew, invisible and precise. At work, Lena dealt in data, not emotion. She understood systems. She knew that patterns exposed everything. And Victor was a pattern waiting to be mapped. When people spoke his name in admiration, she smiled politely. Inside, she was building something. A ledger of truth. A wall of numbers, timestamps, and words. Each entry whispered the same thing. He controls. He hides. He lies. She didn't tell her mother. Elise wouldn't have believed her. She would have begged her to stop making trouble. But trouble was already living in their house. It wore a wedding ring and spoke softly about morality. Haverton adored him. They would never look deeper. Lena didn't need them to. One day, his lies would meet her data. And only one of them would survive. The city skyline shimmered like glass under morning light. Lena drove past it every day, watching towers rise above the haze. She worked in one of them, a place of logic and order. Etha Meridian stood tall, its walls reflecting ambition and control. Inside, the world spoke only in data, charts, and reports. Lena liked that language. It didn't shout. It didn't lie. Numbers told stories without emotion. Her team managed corporate risk assessments. They analyzed patterns, calculated probabilities, and predicted failures. It was a job built on precision, not feelings. And for Lena, precision was survival. She was good at seeing cracks before anyone else did. The systems looked perfect until she touched them. Then the flaws appeared like veins under light. One night, she stayed late in the office. The air was cold, the only sound the hum of machines. A news alert scrolled across the digital wall. Etha Meridian and North Axis finalized merger talks. She froze. The deal was worth hundreds of millions. Everyone in the company was talking about it. It meant power, money, and reputation. It meant change. Lena leaned closer to the screen. Beneath the headline, a name appeared. Ethics Advisor Pending Appointment, Victor Hale. Her chest went still. The letters burned into her mind. Her stepfather the man who silenced her, was entering her world. The world she had built to escape him. She stared at his name until the words blurred. It couldn't be coincidence. She opened the internal merger file from her work tablet. Her clearance allowed access to the core documents. She scanned through pages of legal text and corporate promises. She searched for his role. There it was again, written in the formal tone of contracts. Temporary ethics and compliance officer. She laughed quietly, a sound with no humor. The man who taught her silence was now teaching morality. Her hands trembled slightly, but not with fear. This was opportunity disguised as irony. If he entered her company, he entered her system. And systems could be audited. She searched deeper, scrolling past figures and forecasts. Then she found something. A clause hidden under conditions precedent to closing. Any consultant proven guilty of moral misconduct triggers immediate review. Her breath caught. Moral misconduct. It didn't require conviction. Only credible evidence. The words were sharp, clean, and absolute. She read them again and again. They sounded like law, but to her, they sounded like justice. If she could prove who he really was, the deal would stop. It wasn't revenge. It was compliance. The same rules he preached would become the rope around his neck. She saved the page and renamed the file quietly. Ethics clause. It glowed on her screen, small but powerful. For the first time in years, she smiled. He would step into her world thinking he owned it. And she would be there, waiting with evidence. The hunter would become the audit. And she would not miss. The next morning, Lena arrived early at the office. The city was still waking up, and the halls were empty. She walked to her desk and opened the encrypted merger folder. The contract was a maze of language, but she moved like a guide. Her eyes scanned lines of text until the words blurred together. Then she found what she was looking for. The clause sat deep inside the legal framework. Schedule 7.4, Personnel Risk and Moral Disclosure. She read it slowly, each sentence like a key turning. If credible evidence of moral misconduct appears, operations must suspend. Her pulse quickened. It was a corporate weapon written in perfect neutrality. It didn't care who was right or wrong. It only cared about proof. The clause demanded documentation, not emotion. It was exactly the kind of battlefield she understood. Victor Hale was about to walk into it blind. He had built his life on reputation and public charm. He believed good image was the same as good morals. But contracts were colder than people. They didn't forgive hypocrisy. Lena studied the definitions below the main text. Moral misconduct included acts contrary to honesty or justice. No police report required. No conviction. Just credible evidence. The word credible repeated like a heartbeat on the page. She whispered it under her breath. Credible. It meant believable. And she was very believable when she had data. Lena highlighted the section and copied it to her private drive. She created a new folder and named it precisely. Clause trigger. Inside, she pasted the text and added notes. Trigger conditions. Required documentation. Consequences. The penalty was enormous. If the clause activated, $45 million would freeze in escrow. No executive wanted that stain on their name. The merger would halt instantly. Victor's appointment would collapse before it began. It was a perfect trap disguised as policy. She smiled faintly and leaned back in her chair. For years, he had controlled her through silence. Now she would control him through procedure. She opened her notebook and began sketching her plan. Evidence. Time. Verification. Everything had to align with corporate rules. She couldn't afford mistakes. This had to look professional, not personal. It had to look like duty, not revenge. She typed the first heading. Operational objective. Expose unethical behavior of incoming consultant. Method: internal evidence review under corporate compliance. Timeline: before signing day. She stopped typing and stared at the screen. The words looked like an official report. They were clean, unemotional, deadly. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. She added one final line at the bottom. Outcome: termination of moral authority. The light from the monitor reflected in her eyes. It looked almost like fire, cold and blue. She saved the document and locked the drive. Then she whispered to the empty office. He built his kingdom on ethics. I'll make the rules his undoing. Lena began collecting proof the same night. Her apartment was silent, except for the hum of her laptop. She created a master folder and named it Integrity Gate. Inside it, she built smaller folders for every piece of data. Each file had to be perfect, verifiable, unchangeable. She started with the text from her mother. Don't text your stepfather. She had saved the screenshot years ago. Now it was more than a memory. It was evidence of control. She added the timestamp, hash code, and location data. Then she wrote a short note. Source verified, origin personal device. It felt strange to treat pain like paperwork, but it was necessary. She moved to the next step. Her mother's phone was still under Victor's business plan. He had done that to watch her, to control the account. That mistake gave Lena a door. She knew his company password style by heart. She typed it once, twice, and she was in. The records unfolded like confession. 16 missed calls from Victor to her mother that night. 2 messages sent seconds apart. Then the single outgoing text to Lena. The pattern spoke louder than words. She downloaded the full log, certified and sealed. File name: Haley's log 0921, PDF. She exhaled slowly. One step closer. Next came physical proof. The bruise on her wrist had faded, but not entirely. She took photos under office light the next morning. The company logo shimmered behind her reflection in glass. She checked the metadata, date, time, coordinates. The injury was now corporate evidence. A simple mark turned into digital testimony. She uploaded the images to the secure drive. Then she visited her old neighborhood. The street looked the same, quiet and polished. Across from her mother's house lived Mrs. Voss, a kind woman who always noticed everything. Lena carried a small fruit basket and a gentle smile. She spoke politely about security checks and camera logs. Mrs. Voss hesitated, then nodded. An hour later, an email arrived. Attachment: front door 084, MP4. Lena didn't open it. She extracted the audio file, hashed it, and logged each step. Her process was methodical, almost beautiful in precision. Every detail lined up like coordinates on a map. She reviewed her progress that night. One folder of silence turned into a system of truth. Each file had its own number, timestamp, checksum. Together they formed a story no one could erase. She zipped the folder and encrypted it with a long random key. Then she drafted an email to the ethics board. Subject: urgent matter regarding consultant nomination. Body: evidence submitted under merger clause section 7.4. She attached the folder and pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the confirmation appeared. Your report has been received. Ticket A1173. Lena stared at the screen until the text blurred. For the first time in years, her heartbeat felt steady. The file was no longer hers. It belonged to the system. And the system was about to wake up. The morning light cut through the blinds like thin silver blades. Lena hadn't slept. Her report was already inside North Axis's system. There was no way to undo it. She sat at her desk, staring at her phone. It buzzed once. The name on the screen made her chest tighten. Elise. She answered slowly. Her mother's voice trembled. "What did you do, Lena?" "He called me. He said someone trying to destroy him." Lena closed her eyes. The game had already begun. "He's lying, Mom," she said quietly. "It's corporate, not personal." "He sounds furious," Elise whispered. "You don't understand. You're putting everything at risk." "I'm protecting something bigger," Lena said. The silence on the line felt endless. Then her mother's voice broke. "Please stop this." Lena hung up before the words could pull her back. Her hands were steady again. She turned on her work computer. A notification blinked at the corner of her screen. Access privileges under review. Her stomach tightened, but she expected it. They were moving to contain her. She still had copies saved, hidden, encrypted. She opened her secondary device. Her inbox flashed. A new message from an unknown number. 5 words appeared like ice on the screen. "Cancel now. We know you still need a job." She took a screenshot, labeled it, and saved it. Threat 0907, PNG. They thought fear would make her stop. They didn't know she had already burned her bridges. Her next move had to be precise. She drafted an internal email. Recipient, Ivy Lorne, Compliance Counsel. CC, General Counsel, Etha Meridian. Subject left blank. The body contained a single line. Attached, complete hash chain of custody for evidence matter. She added the final master log. It was the mathematical proof that everything was real. Once sent, it could not be recalled. She clicked send. A quiet hum from the server confirmed transmission. 2 executives now had her entire dossier. The evidence could no longer disappear. Her computer flickered. Access denied. They had locked her out. Perfect timing. She smiled faintly. They had silenced her system, not her truth. At 9:30, another notification appeared. Meeting invite, merger signing 10:00 a.m. Aurora Room. They were keeping her in the room. It was intimidation disguised as protocol. She accepted the invite without hesitation. She stood, straightened her blazer, and checked the envelope. The one marked open only if Mr. Hale is seated. Her footsteps echoed through the quiet hallway. Every light reflected her face in fragments of glass. By the time she reached the elevator, she no longer felt anger. Only calm precision. The doors closed. The machine began to rise. At floor 33, it stopped. Victor Hale stepped in. He smiled like a man walking into church. "Big day," he said softly. Lena met his eyes, expression unreadable. "Yes," she replied. "For someone." The elevator rose in silence. The next time the doors opened, it would be judgment. The elevator doors slid open onto the top floor. The air was cold and perfectly still. Lena stepped out without looking back. The Aurora Room waited at the end of the corridor. Its glass walls shimmered with pale morning light. Inside, the executives sat in their places. Folders, pens, and water glasses lined the long table. The digital clock on the wall read 9:57. Every movement felt rehearsed, mechanical, inevitable. Lena took her seat at the far end. No one spoke to her. She was invisible, a formality in the corner. At 9:58, Victor Hale entered. He looked every bit the polished professional. His suit flawless, his smile rehearsed. He greeted the room with easy confidence. "Gentlemen," he said, "shall we begin?" He placed his briefcase on the table. The latch clicked open like a trigger. Then a voice broke the silence. "Excuse me," said someone at the door. Every head turned. Ivy Lorne stood there, calm and precise. A single envelope rested in her hand. She walked forward without hesitation. "Before we proceed," she said, "this must be opened." Her tone was even, but her presence shifted the air. Lena felt the room tighten. Victor's smile faltered for half a heartbeat. The CEO frowned. "What is this?" he asked. "A timestamped submission under merger protocol," Ivy replied. She placed the envelope on the table. It bore Lena's handwriting. "Open only if Mr. Hale is seated." Silence filled the room like pressure. The general counsel broke the seal. The sound of tearing paper echoed like thunder. Inside were photographs, call logs, and certification sheets. Each document stamped with digital proofs and codes. The first image showed a bruise on Lena's wrist. The company logo glowed faintly behind her reflection. The next page displayed 16 unanswered calls. Then the message from Elise Hale. "Don't text your stepfather." The final file showed an audio waveform. Background noise, a raised voice, a woman pleading. It was undeniable. No one spoke. No one breathed. Victor's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Across the table, the North Axis representative looked grim. He turned to the board. "This triggers the clause," he said quietly. The CEO closed his eyes for a moment. "Effective immediately," he replied. The deal froze. The room felt heavier with every second. Victor tried to speak again, but the decision was already made. He had been undone by his own reputation. The meeting dissolved into murmurs and cold silence. Lena rose from her chair. She didn't look at him as she walked away. Behind her, the voices grew distant, muffled, irrelevant. The elevator doors closed again, sealing the floor above her. Her reflection in the steel looked steady, calm, free. She stepped into the street below. The sky was gray, the wind sharp and clean. For the first time in years, silence felt like peace. He had built his empire on ethics. She had ended it with evidence. And the truth, once opened, could never be sealed again. That night, the city glowed quietly beneath the rain. Lena walked home without an umbrella. The streets shimmered like wet glass. Her phone buzzed once, then stopped. She didn't check it. The world no longer demanded her reaction. She passed the cafe, where she used to wait for her mother. The lights were still on, warm and steady. She paused for a moment, then kept walking. No anger remained in her chest. Only stillness. The merger had collapsed that afternoon. The board issued a statement about ethical inconsistencies. Victor Hale resigned before sunset. His name vanished from every document. His empire of decency dissolved without a sound. Lena stood on her porch and looked at the dark sky. The air smelled like rain and electricity. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. For the first time, quiet didn't feel like fear. It felt like proof that she had survived. Justice hadn't shouted. It had whispered through data and precision. She hadn't destroyed him. She had documented him. And that truth would live longer than his name.